On today's show, I am joined by Anthony Irwin, a legitimate Los Angeles Lakers expert, to dive into one of the biggest subplots of the year for the Atlanta Hawks, and we'll get into all of that right now.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 1799 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Monday into Tuesday. And today's podcast is brought to you by the folks at GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. I also want to encourage you at the top of the podcast, as I always would, to make us your first listen each and every day here at Locked On Hawks. Check us out across the podcast world, places like Spotify and Apple, Overcast. We're also on YouTube. If you are watching this podcast right now on that platform, please like this video and subscribe, and do us a favor and subscribe on an audio platform and video platform to support the show in the maximum amount of ways. And today's podcast is going to be focused on the Los Angeles Lakers, actually, as a curveball. But first, I should plug, we had a two-part episode last week on Onyeka Okongwu with Glenn Willis, joining me to discuss the player capsules that we've been doing all summer long. Then I had a mailbag on Friday, and then on Monday, I dropped a show about Larry Nance Jr., which will kind of answer the question about what's going on with Larry Nance Jr., and that's part of the player capsule as well. But it's been very busy. We're ramping up the frequency of episodes as the season is looming. I'm recording this actually on Monday into Tuesday, so 2 weeks until Media Day. Full schedule coming up. Later on this week, actually, I'll have a two-part episode with Glenn Willis again, talking about Dyson Daniels, a very intriguing player for the Hawks coming up this year. But on today's podcast, we're again focusing on the Los Angeles Lakers. We'll get into all the details and things like that, but the Lakers have an unprotected draft pick that is coming to Atlanta this year, which means Hawks fans, diehards, even casual fans will be monitoring the Lakers all year long and, frankly, rooting against Los Angeles throughout the season. I am bringing on Anthony Irwin, who covers the Lakers each and every day, to talk about what to expect from LA, LeBron, AD. They didn't really make changes this year. It's a little bit strange. All that said, here it is, talking about the Lakers in preview fashion, and all of that is coming up right now with Anthony Irwin. I am joined now by a friend of the podcast, someone who follows the Los Angeles Lakers every day of his life. Anthony Irwin is here. Hello, sir. How are you?
When you say it like that, it just makes you feel deeply unhealthy.
Like when you can say about me and the Hawks is the same thing. So I guess we're all deeply unhealthy together. So I understand.
Yeah, our teams, they like to give us a bit of a hard time, is how I'll put it.
That's right. And look, I'm sure I can already hear Hawks fans yelling at you through the either computer screen or audio platform that the Lakers don't have it tough because they've won a little bit in their time. Anthony, I'll just say that out loud. But
yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
You understand the plight, and the Hawks have never won anything and all those things. Anyway, so the extensive purpose to have you on, I'm not going to preview every single team in the NBA in its own episode, but there are two teams that the Hawks will be keeping a very close eye on this year. One is the Lakers, one is the Kings, for draft pick purposes. And the Lakers is even more clear cut because unless the Hawks trade that pick, whatever the Lakers do impacts the Hawks directly. The Kings pick is protected. The Lakers pick is not. So that is why we're doing this in September for a Western Conference team. That pick's been gone from your life for a while, but is there anything challenging for you to discuss this? Because I know for a lot of teams that are like less present focused, it might be kind of brutal. Like the Hawks, for instance, their pick San Antonio. It's not a lot of fun to talk about. Does that you're kind of used to this by now because the Lakers are like perpetually all in, but how are you feeling about the pick not being yours?
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of is what it is. At this point, the moves that they've made, especially the picks, like the 25 pick has to do with trying to win in the now, and that's the price that you pay when you have LeBron in your organization and he's entering, his age 40 season, and it's the price that you have to pay if you want to have him and Anthony Davis at the same time in your organization. What I would say, like, it's funny, when I think about picks that are owed now and are owed in the future, they don't bother me nearly as much as the picks that they currently have. Like I don't want them to have any picks, to be completely honest. I would prefer that they try to maximize this window and try to do the winning that is kind of expected of you when you have LeBron and you have AD. The last time that they made a pick was Jalen Hood-Schifino. It's not like they did much better in their organization by keeping that pick, So And that isn't to say that like they don't have draft success. They do. Their scouting department, I would say, is maybe one of the better things that they do as an organization. But again, it's just about timelines and picks that you would be using in this upcoming draft or last year's draft or the one before it aren't going to mesh with the timeline that you have to work under when you have LeBron.
Yeah, and the Lakers are all in, and that's actually a good bridge. And we'll come back at maybe the back half of this conversation, be like, okay, how good are the Lakers? But until we get to that, I know this is something you talked about a lot, but it struck me again, prepping for this, just how little the Lakers did. And you brought it up kind of tangentially there, and keeping their draft picks and things like that. And look, they could still make moves, and we can talk about that if you want to, and how likely that is. But at the moment, they basically did almost nothing in the offseason, and they were pretty good last year. Not great, but pretty good. But you add a couple of rookies, Dalton Connect in the first round, older guy, might be able to help a little bit, still a rookie. You lose Taurean Prince and Spencer Dinwiddie. That's basically it. Am I missing anything here? It feels like there's just nothing. This is just the same team as it was last year, essentially.
How dare you not mention Bronny James? How dare you?
I did say a couple rookies. I don't think Bronny's going to make a big impact on the floor this year. I'm actually, as a sidebar, I bet I'm higher on Bronny than a lot of people are. Not that really matters, but like I think Bronny could be an NBA player in 3 years. He's not right now, but he could.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Well, that's kind of the issue, is that like the whole back third of their roster is filled with not NBA players. You know, you have
that's tough.
You have Bronny, who I agree with you. I also think that he could be pretty good down the road in the right role. He's saying the right things also about, wanting to focus on defense and wanting to impact winning and stuff like that. So he has a good head on his shoulders. I think eventually he'll figure it out. But the Lakers don't need eventually. They need right now. And then, the other guys that they have like contractually signed to their roster as NBA contracts, Maxwell Lewis has shown flashes, but the vast majority of his time has been pretty uninspiring is how I would put it. He has some of the skills there. He's a good athlete, but just hasn't really put it together. So he's probably a couple of years away from being a couple of years away. You have Dalton Connect, who, he's of the rookies, I think this year, like he basically has to be able to perform right away because of how old he is. Otherwise, it looks kind of rough for him. And then you have Cam Reddish, who I'm sure Atlanta Hawks fans feel a certain way about. And then, you have like Jackson Hayes and,
Christian Wood, who's hurt.
Yeah.
So
Christian Wood, who, may have company timed his way like potentially out of the NBA. If we come to find out that he chose to basically hold off on getting surgery so as to enjoy his offseason and miss the front end of this season, I don't know how many more chances Wood is going to get, right? We've already seen his earnings per year drop from, the 15 range down to a veteran minimum. He's kind of clinging to life. And if he's doing that stuff while he's clinging to life, it doesn't normally bode well. So it's just this offseason was a bit of a mess. They hired JJ Redick, who was a first-time coach, not a first-time NBA coach, but a first-time coach. His only experience to this point is as like a fifth grade, rec league coach, and slightly different stakes
a little bit
down there. And then, they kind of flirted with Dan Hurley. There are, some people you talk to really think that they made a concerted effort and that they thought they could get him. Other people that you talk to kind of wonder, like, all right, if you thought you could get him, why did you lowball him in the way that they did? And then, you kind of, it took them forever to fill out their coaching staff. They didn't get that done until Summer League was basically wrapped up. JJ Redick decided not to coach in Summer League, and the guy who did coach in Summer League wound up getting fired anyway. It was just, it's been just kind of a jumble of minor annoyances that add up to a very, very annoying offseason. And when you couple that with the inaction on the roster, it was a bit of a disaster. There's kind of no getting around it.
Today's show is brought to you by GameTime, and GameTime is the best place to find tickets. There's nothing like checking out a live event, whether you're into sports or music or theater or comedy or all of the above. They have a new feature at GameTime called GameTime Picks. It makes getting tickets even easier for you. They filter out stuff that you actually don't want or don't need and only show you the incredible deals that you can find at GameTime. No wasting time searching through thousands of different tickets. For example, there are awesome deals for the Hawks season opener on October 23rd at State Farm Arena against Brooklyn, including a pair of tickets right now available for only $27 each, including fees at GameTime. That's an awesome deal, of course. There's more of that happening all the time at GameTime. Plus, my favorite aspect personally is that you can view seats through the all-in pricing. You actually know the exact total before you get to the checkout screen at the very end. None of those surprise fees that everybody hates, including me. Also, get in on the panoramic views from your seats before you actually buy them, so you don't know what to expect when you get to the venue that you are going to, and you're getting the lowest possible price guaranteed with the folks at GameTime. Take all the guesswork out of buying tickets with the GameTime app. Download the GameTime app right now, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account at GameTime and redeem that promo code. It is LOCKEDONNBA, all one word, LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Terms apply. Download the GameTime app today. What time is it? It's game time. One thing I was going to point out, if you didn't, and I'm glad you did, is that the big change is coach, obviously. And we just don't know what JJ is going to be. You mentioned the coaching staff. They brought in old pal Nate McMillan, so that's a Hawks reference for you. I think Nate is, to be fair to Nate, Nate's a very good assistant. Like, having Nate as your assistant is good. He's a pedigreed head coach. I believe Scott Brooks is on the staff as well. So they have two former head coaches at least. Mm-hmm. So some support for JJ. But I mean, maybe you have a strong opinion. I think that it's a giant question mark, and that's not good or bad necessarily. We won't do the whole Darvin Ham thing on this podcast, but Darvin was not seemingly well liked in Los Angeles. It felt like by the end. I love Darvin, so I am definitely partial.
He's a really likable guy. Like, he's a really like affable. If it's the right, like, Darvin is the kind of guy who you could go out and grab a beer with, and he would be a really fun hang or whatever. But the more that you kind of learned about how he was running things as a head coach, and he even admitted it to Patrick Beverley, who basically said so on his pod that, like, Darvin just wasn't preparing in the way that he needed to. And so, yeah, it ended poorly, I think, for Darvin. And, it puts a lot of pressure on JJ to, like, basically the only possible upgrade this year is at head coach. The problem is that it's only a possible one. We don't know how good JJ is going to be at this. We don't know. Like, I know a lot of my, peers and colleagues like to basically project how JJ is going to coach. It's just funny how a lot of that projection has a lot, like, in line with how they view basketball. So you're basically just, like, hoping that, like, JJ sees the game that you do. And I'm just not quite willing to go there. I think he'll be pretty good. The people that I've spoken to or around JJ say that he's, like, crazy competitive and crazy detail oriented, gets along with players, all of that good stuff. That's a good start. We just need to see what it actually looks like. And I just think it's kind of unfair because of how not productive this offseason was, that the Lakers are basically telling JJ, hey man, you have to be the difference between a first round exit this year and competing for a championship this year. That's tough. That's just like, that's a really tough ask.
It's a very tough ask. And even if he's good, he'll make mistakes, because even the best first time coaches make mistakes. Like, I remember Spoelstra is the best coach in the league, maybe. Like, he made mistakes. Like, that's just what happens when you're a rookie coach. So sort of in the how good were they last year discussion, I want to ask you this, because of course everything in this conversation, as you well know, playing a road game as you are here, is that Hawks fans are rooting against the Lakers. So last year they won 47 games. They were pretty good by all accounts. They also were quite healthy, at least the guys that matter, the two guys that matter. I believe it was 147 games combined for LeBron and AD. That seems like a very rosy projection for a run back, given the age of the age of LeBron and the history of AD. I'm not saying it can't happen, but would you take the under on that as far as total games between those two guys if you had to bet it right now?
I mean, I would reluctantly, because it would just, like, devastate what the
Well,
Lakers
that,
are
I
gonna
mean,
try to do.
well, that's the thing. So that obviously
Yeah,
it's underlying in this conversation of just how reliant they're going to be given
yeah,
their current roster on the two of them, because it's such a top heavy roster. LeBron is an alien, and he's 40, he's still doing this. He still looks like LeBron most of the time. That's crazy to me. But the drop between number 2 and number 3 on their pecking order is the biggest in the league, maybe. Like,
yeah.
due respect to guys like Reeves or whoever you want to say is 3, that's a big drop.
Yeah, it 100% is. So I will say this on the injury front, and frankly, all that matters is how healthy your stars are,
Yeah.
and you have to be able to make everything work. Hilariously, Darvin Ham said that it's actually easier to deal with injuries to your big dogs, is how he put it. He was objectively wrong. But like what the Lakers did deal with last year though was they had these like clusters of injuries where for whatever reason all of their wings would get hurt and then all of their guards would get hurt and it made it kind of and all of their bigs would get hurt. There was a game I believe that they played without AD and without Wood where Jackson Hayes had to play like 40 minutes or something crazy. It was just like it was so they were like simultaneously insanely lucky to have LeBron and AD as available as they did, but they were just like their injuries were just they came at really weird times and in really weird clusters, and it made for so that they're actually hoping for even better injury luck this year, where you're going to deal with some injuries. You're always going to.
Yeah.
You just hope that they don't take out entire chunks of your rotation whenever they happen. So we'll see how that goes, and it feels kind of ridiculous asking for better injury luck when, like you said, you had 150 some odd games of LeBron and AD last year. So, I again, I would probably take the under because of where LeBron's at in his career. Um, Ironically, AD has actually slimmed down this summer. And you watched him in that Olympics run, and he looked like first year
Yeah, he looked great.
AD, like in terms of like how explosive he was. When I say first year with the Lakers, like that first year, you go back and you watch that first game that he played against the Clippers, and he just looks like a completely different player. And he bulked up to try to play more center, and I don't think that was quite wise. Now I think he's basically told the Lakers, "Hey, I'm slimming down. You can go out get a center if you want, but I'm slimming down because I don't like playing the way that I played the last couple of years." So we'll see how that the impact that has on his body. And then yeah, like you talked about, if that drop from LeBron and AD to I think last year in aggregate, I would probably say D'Lo was their third best player, which is terrifying.
Yeah.
I think they were hoping for more from Reeves, but D'Lo gets so much usage out there that I don't think Reeves was ever going to play in the role that the Lakers needed him to play in. Reeves and Ham never really saw eye to eye either. So that made things a little tricky. And then you talk about steep drop-offs from like after Reeves, you're talking about like maybe Rui is their fifth best player.
Yeah.
And it's just and again, it's a roster that clearly needed upgrades, and they just they didn't make any upgrades.
Right. And that's why I wanted to leave with that, just because it's weird how light they are in some areas of this roster. And while, LeBron has been indestructible for most of his career, he might still be, that's insane, but he might still be.
It's
AD
incredible.
played, I think he averaged like 50 games a year for like 5 years before last year, something like that, and then played 76. Maybe I will never root for a guy to get hurt ever. I'll say that out loud.
Yeah.
I'm never doing that. I do think that AD is likely to be under that number of 76 from last year, just based on history. Okay, this is related.
Say, though, like the 50 game average before that, like you had the bubble year, and then the following year kicked off like 5 business days later, and I don't think
and they of course played all the way to the end because they won the championship. So that's
right. And you look at like all of those teams that were in like the final 4 teams from the bubble year. They all struggled with injuries the following year. The one that got kind of annoying was the year after that, which again was another shortened off season.
Yep.
But LeBron was able to bounce back. AD hadn't quite bounced back yet. And then finally, you arrive, where he is now, where he played the 76 games last year. And look, like we can also acknowledge that stars around the league played more games last year because of the eligibility rules for year-end awards. And I think that played a role in everybody, including LeBron and AD.
Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. You've heard me talk about them many times before on the podcast, and FanDuel has something different for you this time around. They are, of course, America's #1 sportsbook. And now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 at FanDuel and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game with the folks at YouTube TV. All you have to have is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. When you get to FanDuel as well, you will know the FanDuel Sportsbook app is so easy to use. They have all stuff you're looking for across the sports betting space. They have over-unders and point spreads and live betting and money lines, player props, future bets, and all that and much more, honestly. The FanDuel app is safe. It's secure. They cover the entire range of sports as well. NBA, of course, top of the list, as we cover on this podcast. WNBA, NFL is in full swing now. College football, hockey, baseball, golf, tennis, soccer, auto racing, boxing, MMA, and so much more. And now is an awesome time to sign up with the folks at FanDuel Sportsbook. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. Yes, one more time, visit FanDuel.com and check out America's #1 sportsbook. What happens if either of them, but I would say especially LeBron, maybe you could, who would they be better off without? Like, it's one of those things where, like, okay, somebody misses 20 games between the two of them or whatever. What happens? Like, are they going to bottom out? Like, how, I guess for the way I'll frame it is, how bad are they if without one of them, or God forbid without both of them?
So I think, like, they can handle a brief absence with LeBron, or, the occasional, 3-day stint where he's just kind of nursing a hamstring kind of a deal. Knock on wood. I don't want them to try to.
Of course.
But like, they have, like, LeBron's, creativity. You have D'Lo, you have Austin. They're going to be using AD as more of a hub this year. So maybe offensively you can get by. And LeBron is basically a DH during the regular season for most of the games anyway. So, like, again, they would still be screwed. And especially if LeBron is going to miss a lot of time, because while he is out, if LeBron is out and another creator is out, then you're just toast. Just nothing you could do. Anthony Davis, they cannot miss any time with him. Like, it's not just like, missing a few games here and there. Brad, when he sits down, the defense falls off of a cliff. Like, I've likened him, like, what the Lakers ask him to do defensively is me trying to wrangle my 2 children in the 3 hours or so between Avery getting off of school and Jen getting home from work. Like, it is just an absolute tire fire. And if AD misses any time whatsoever, the Lakers, like, would be an upset if they made the play in, with AD missing any time whatsoever.
You confirmed my suspicion there. And look, I'm not a Lakers expert. I've covered the whole league, but not like you do with the Lakers. But yeah, I mean, just the depth chart behind them. We don't have to go crazy on this, but like the guys behind AD, it's dire. I mean, just on paper, it doesn't really make any, even, defensively is of course the headliner, but even, I mean, there's not a lot there. Jared Vanderbilt, who I think we talked about before we started recording, Jared Vanderbilt's still banged up. It seems like he missed the end of last season. He would be helpful without AD. He'd probably be really necessary without AD, and they don't have him right now. Yeah. Their backup centers, Christian Wood is hurt, as we talked about. Jackson Hayes. It's really
Christian Koloko.
Two-way signing Christian Koloko. Yeah. So I don't want to go down that rabbit hole too much, but yeah, they cannot afford to be without either of them, but especially it seems like AD is pretty irreplaceable on this roster. Okay, we talked about that. They were good last year. Even if let's assume health for a second. How likely are they to add? I think you would probably guess they would have added this summer already, but recording this in mid-September, they could add in training camp. They could add in January. It could add before the training. Like, are they going to still, in your mind, if they're staying afloat, if LeBron's healthy, et cetera, are they going to look to maybe cash some stuff in and go this year? Or is it like, wait and see kind of thing.
Yeah, so I got a good sense of how the offseason was going to go when heading into the draft. I was being told, by people close to that situation that they were going to use the draft pick, and then B, they were going to keep the player that they used that draft pick on, because essentially what fans and everybody was told last year was that the Lakers were going to, they would have as many as 3 first rounders to use in the summer of 2024. And just you wait, everybody, it's going to be incredible. And the one other thing that you have to keep in mind, Rob Pelinka doesn't like to enter a season without at least 1 first rounder to use at the deadline, to dangle at the deadline. So that means when you decide to use the pick and keep the player that you use that pick on, and you go into an offseason knowing that you want to keep a first rounder at your disposal to use at the deadline or dangle at the deadline, that shrinks the number of assets that you could be using from 3 first rounders down to 1. And what every team basically did in their negotiations with the Lakers was like, all right, you want a good player from us? We want Austin Reeves. Lakers don't want to trade Austin Reeves. Okay. We want 2 first-round picks. We don't want to trade 2 first-round picks. And that ends the conversation. Like, it was
Sounds
just, yeah, right.
I mean,
exactly.
Let's just say this out loud. I mean, it happened with DeJounte Murray, right?
Yeah,
so they
100%.
got pretty far down the line, as you and I talked offline about at the time. Even they got pretty far down the line with DeJounte a couple of times. It felt like in that January February run last year, they didn't do it, and it was the same sort of thing.
Same exact movie. It was it was a Michael Bay movie.
The Hawks asked for Reeves as part of the package. Lakers say no. Yeah. Lakers say here take D'Lo. Hawks say no. Moving parts anyway. And it seems like it was basically a run back of that in the summer. And maybe they changed their stance on something. It does seem crazy. I'm not trying to feed the beast of your anxiety, Anthony, but to be in your shoes and have this 40-year-old guy who's an absolute legend and to not push your chips in. But so maybe they'll do it at some point. But again, we're doing this in mid-September. They haven't yet. And I think Hawks fans are obviously rooting for them not to, because that means they're not going to be as good. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, 100%. It is maddening. It is absolutely insane. I just had on for the Lakers Lounge, we had Sam Esfandiari on, and obviously he covers the Warriors for light years. And we were talking about how kind of like sad almost it is to watch Steph kind of be let down by the Warriors as they don't push their chips in for Lauri Markkanen this year. The Lakers are kind of doing the same thing with LeBron, and it's just, it's kind of crazy to watch these 2 kind of icons of their generation sit in very similar situations as everybody around the NBA and frankly around the world are waiting for those guys to get at least one more really cool postseason or NBA finals moment. And it won't happen until both of those organizations kind of wake up and realize, you have Steph, you have LeBron, like you should probably try to win while you have those guys. And they're somehow, holding off Father Time in the way that they are. So, I would probably, so like, I get this question. I ask you when we do Monday mailbag episodes, every Monday, and every single time I've asked for questions, listeners are asking, all right, they aren't actually going to not do anything, right? Like they're going to do something like, can we get a trade before camp and all this stuff? I would be pretty surprised if they made a trade before camp. I think one thing that they're going to, try to do, one thing I'm hoping, I guess, this is more projection like I talked about with JJ Redick earlier, but one thing I would like to maybe see them try is approach D'Angelo Russell and say, hey, we need Austin Reeves in this kind of a role, because given the type of players that the Lakers haven't acquired because they have refused to include Austin Reeves in their, it's THT. They did it previously with THT, who is now basically out of the league, which is insane. And like, if that happens again, and you've held on to your very few organizational wins at the cost of competing while you've had LeBron James, that's a pretty tough look. So I think, one thing that they probably need to start doing is relying less on D'Angelo Russell, so it becomes easier to move him. Because right now, if you trade, given how much they're going to relied on D'Angelo Russell last year, he set a record for most 3-pointers made in Lakers history, and did so at a really high, clip as well. And had an objectively good regular season. The problem with him, though, is that that the clock is going to strike midnight, and he's going to turn into a pumpkin again at some point in the playoffs. And for the Lakers, if you rely on him a ton in the regular season, it almost becomes like relying on a bad habit. It's kind of like, I don't know if you're a golfer, but when you see golfers, like when you see young golfers basically line up way left because they know that they're going to slice it, yeah. Like it's fine, for a little bit, but you can't actually design your entire game off of that crazy slice. So I think of what I would like to see is for D'Angelo Russell to come off of the bench actually at the onset of the season. Let Austin handle the offense with LeBron and with AD out there as well, because that's the role Austin needs to be in if he is going to be the player who is worth holding on to at the cost of a DeJounte Murray, at the cost of Jeremy Grant, at the cost of all of these other players out there. So I think if they're able to do that, I think that sets a tone where I would be more optimistic about what the season might look like. But the entire time I've been talking about this, I'm sure your audience is like, D'Lo's not coming off the bench. What do we do?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously logistics there, and even last year, it's not his fault, but like he had a really good stretch around the deadline. Like he got really hot for a while. I don't even remember this. Like he played great, and it was like, all right, dude, they get scared off trading him now because he's playing so well, and they're relying on him. So I mean, you said he was their third best player last year. I think you're probably right, and it's tough. So, all right, I'm going to get you out of here, but we should talk about like projection, floor, ceiling for Hawks fans. It's obviously early. There's a lot of flexibility here with injuries and things like that. Let's end with your actual projection. But what is your working floor and ceiling within reason? Obviously, if AD tears his ACL in the second game of the season, like the floor goes through the floor. You know what I mean? We all understand that. But reasonable everything. What is your floor ceiling kind of gap for this team in your mind?
Yeah, so I think, they'll be in that 47-ish wins range again. It's hard to look at the exact same roster and not think that like their range is not the exact same outcome of last year. Like it's, you might have some variance here and there. Maybe Reeves is a little bit better. Maybe Rui gets a little bit better. Rui actually had a good year for them last year. He was just so inconsistent in terms of his role. So the impact of that good season was lessened at times because Darvin really, really liked Cam for some reason. And so like, Brad, the number of times I say things out loud.
Well, and Torian, it was so funny. It was like going back a few years for me. It was a lot of Torian, and a lot of Cam at times for the Lakers last year, which is kind of funny. And by the way, just say this out loud for Hawks fans that may not know this: 47 wins last year is a good season, but that was also the 8th seed in the East and in the West. Yeah. So like maybe that's the 6th seed this year. I don't know. Like it was a historically pretty impressive West season. But that's where it was. 47 wins was still in the 8th seed in the West, which means squarely in the middle of the play-in, despite all that stuff.
No, I mean, I think they'll probably be, in that play-in range. And like I guess the best case scenario here is that JJ is a tangible upgrade right away over Darvin Ham, and guys like playing for him more. Because the one thing that I don't think can be covered enough is how the guys felt about the head coach, Darvin Ham. Darvin Ham, the person, I think they all kind of liked him, but Darvin Ham, the head coach, he lost the locker room. I would maybe even say before like Thanksgiving. It got ugly quickly. And if you don't have that happen with JJ and he has buy-in and they are like a 5 or a 6 seed heading into the deadline, then you make whatever upgrade that you have to, or even not even the deadline, but that mid-December range where more guys become eligible to be traded. Veteran minimum players can be stacked, because they couldn't this summer.
Yeah.
And so if that happens, if they are like a 5 or a 6 seed, late enough into the season and they do make an upgrade, now you're going from 47 wins to, the 50 win range. And it's so crazy how like 2 losses or 2 wins either way just completely changes the outlook of a season. In the West, if you win, had the Lakers won one more game, I think they would have, no, had they won 2 more games, they would have avoided the play-in altogether. Had they lost 2 more games, they would have had to win. They would have been the 10 seed and had to win 2 road games for the opportunity to play the Denver Nuggets or whoever it was. So it's just it's a brutal conference. It's a brutal ask what the Lakers are looking to do. And yeah, if you're a fan base rooting for bad things to happen for a season to go poorly, you feel pretty good about it. Like you feel
There's
pretty
some
good
stuff in
about
there.
things playing out in your favor.
Yeah, there's some stuff in there for sure. I think it's pretty wide range just because of all the factors in play. Obviously, if they're playing well and they go out and buy, then last year I believe the pick was the 17th pick the Lakers had in last year's draft. So if you just ran back the season, the Hawks get the 17th pick from the Lakers. That's what would happen again. That's maybe the median. I don't know where that projection kind of lies.
Yeah,
there's flexibility there too. I mean, if 47 wins could have been the 20th pick, I don't know, something like that. It's really interesting. I'm sure Hawks fans will have more questions than answers coming out of this, as I know you do. But I will be interested. I do think that there's considerable upside. I think you agree, even though it probably pains
100%.
you for this pick. There's some considerable upside because once you get in the lottery, all bets are off, and it's a good draft and all those things. And I do think there is non-injury downside for the Lakers too, just because of how thin the roster is. I mean, I don't think there's okay. I'll ask you this. Is there a way they win 40 games with reasonable injury luck? Is that possible, or is that too pessimistic? You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying that you take LeBron and AD away, but like last year, I believe their point differential was like 43, 44. Like they outperformed a little bit. Is there a way that they're just worse because maybe LeBron is a half tick worse and AD is a half tick worse or whatever? I don't know. Is that possible?
I don't see AD being worse because he's like that's the other part of all.
He's
in
his prime. Yeah.
If you have if any other team had Anthony Davis in the age range that they're at, they're going all in for Anthony Davis. Like he's a top 10 in terms of just raw talent. He's top 10. Maybe you can make an argument like top 7 most talented player in the NBA. He's in the middle of his prime. And the guy next to him is LeBron James. Like if there's any team that should be all in, it should be the Lakers, but whatever, completely different conversation. I've had, 37 different ways this summer, but I don't necessarily see like with LeBron and AD being healthy. I think that sets your like baseline at
Mid-40s.
43 wins, like that's the absolute worst I could possibly see it going.
I can see that. That makes sense. So yeah, there's a good idea. Hopefully, if you want more Lakers coverage, I would recommend people following Anthony throughout the year. Anything you want to plug in particular, I will do a good job setting up before we start. But please share all of your outlets, and I think Hawks fans might actually give you some extra numbers this year as they're looking game to game intently on the Lakers.
Yeah, I mean, you could follow me. You could see it down there at the bottom at Anthony Irwin LA on Twitter. The Lakers Lounge is everywhere that you find podcasts, preferably on Odyssey. They're my employer. And then
there you go.
I am working. This is kind of like a big reveal. Lee Ellis and actually Lee is based down there in Atlanta. So,
yeah, of No Dunks TBJ starters fame. Yes.
Yeah. So Lee Ellis and I are actually going to be launching a podcast this year called Basketball Passport. And,
awesome.
Every Sunday night we'll be getting together and kind of looking back on the NBA at large. And then we'll do like the occasional big news show too, as the show grows. But what makes it kind of unique is that Lee has obviously been traveling the world, going and playing pickup all over the world. And he tells these really cool stories about what basketball means to these regions and what these pickup courts mean to these regions. And, he and I are going to be having conversations on those stories as well. So it's not just your typical NBA podcast. It does have some kind of like human element to it as he tells these very human stories around the world. So I'm really excited about that.
No, that's awesome. I can't wait to check that out. I appreciate you sharing with the folks. Maybe we'll get some Hawks fans to subscribe to that podcast when it drops. That'll be fun. Thanks for doing this, man. In mid-September to kind of go down the rabbit hole of maybe your worst fears. So thank you for the willingness to do so.
Yeah, I'm gonna go assume the fetal position and grab my blankie and all those good things.
Conflicting vibes here from Hawks fans and Lakers fans all year long. So hopefully we'll all keep it civil together. Thank you again, my friend, for doing this. Please check out Anthony's work across the board. If you're listening to this podcast or watching on YouTube, please subscribe here, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, etc. Tell your friends, and we'll see you all next time.